The Galactic Council chamber hummed with tension. Across the vast hall, beings of every shape and size sat in their glowing seats, tentacled diplomats from watery worlds, gas-breathing elders floating in protective orbs, and sharp-eyed hunters with claws tapping nervously. Today was no ordinary meeting. A discovery had rattled the stars, and it came from a small, dusty moon on the edge of human territory. A junior archivist named Krell, a wiry creature with 4 arms and too many questions, had stumbled upon a vault buried deep beneath the moon's surface. Inside were Earth's ancient war archives, locked in a strange, shimmering crystal. But it wasn't the crystal that made Krell's 3 hearts pound, it was the language etched across it. Vorak. A tongue dead for thousands of years, once spoken by a warrior race feared across the galaxy. Now, somehow, it belonged to humans. Krell's report had climbed the council's ranks like a wildfire. Every official who read it added their own notes of worry until it landed before the High Assembly. The chamber's lights dimmed as Krell stepped forward, his voice trembling but clear. "The archives are human, no doubt," he said, projecting the crystal's image for all to see. "But the Vorak script, it's flawless. Not a translation, not a copy. It's as if humans wrote it themselves." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The Vorak had been legends, their fleets carving paths of destruction until they vanished without a trace. How could humans, a species barely 3 centuries into space travel, wield their words? The council's leader, a towering figure named Vun, rose from his seat. His scales shimmered green with unease, and his deep voice echoed through the hall. "Bring the human here," he ordered. "They must explain this." Hours later, a small ship docked at the station, and out stepped Lila, the human diplomat. She was young, with bright eyes and a calm smile that made the aliens shift uncomfortably. Dressed in a simple gray uniform, she carried no weapons, no guards, just a quiet confidence that filled the room like a storm about to break. Vun glared down at her. "Explain your archives," he demanded. "Why are they written in a language older than your species' time among the stars?" Lila tilted her head, her smile widening just a little. "We've always been good at keeping records," she said simply. Her voice was light, almost playful, but it carried a weight that made Krell's spines tingle. The council wasn't satisfied. A translator named Mira, a bird-like being with feathers that glowed faintly, stepped forward with a tablet. "We've begun decoding the crystal," she chirped. "It's slow work. Vorak is complex, 16 tenses, words for war we don't even understand. But what we've found so far, it speaks of battles. Huge ones. And humans are at the center." The chamber buzzed with nervous chatter. Battles? Humans were known as traders, explorers, peacekeepers, not warriors. Vun leaned closer, his shadow falling over Lila. "Your people joined us 300 years ago," he said. "The Vorak disappeared 3,000 years ago. How do you know their language?" Lila didn't flinch. "Maybe we're fast learners," she replied. A few aliens laughed nervously, but most stayed silent, watching her. She wasn't giving answers, not yet. Instead, she nodded toward the crystal. "Keep reading," she said. "You'll figure it out. We humans like a good story." Her words hung in the air, teasing, daring them to dig deeper. Krell felt a spark of curiosity ignite inside him. What was she hiding? And why did she seem so sure they'd find it? The council wasted no time. Teams of scholars and machines worked through the night, pulling fragments from the crystal. The archives were a maze of data, maps of forgotten stars, designs for ships no one recognized, and lists of tactics written in sharp, jagged Vorak runes. One phrase kept appearing: strength in the unexpected. It didn't make sense. Humans were small, soft creatures compared to the galaxy's giants. Yet here they were, tied to a language of war and power. Mira's feathers ruffled as she read aloud a decoded line: "The enemy came with fire, and we answered with shadow. Shadow? What did that mean? The council demanded more, but the crystal resisted, its secrets locked behind layers of Vorik code. By morning, the chamber was a mess of tired eyes and spilled drinks. Vun called Lila back, his patience gone. Enough games, he growled. Tell us what this means, or we'll assume the worst. The worst, Krell knew, meant war, or at least suspicion that could shatter the fragile peace. Lila stepped into the light, her expression unchanged. The worst, she echoed. That's your imagination talking. I'll give you a hint, those archives aren't just history. They're a lesson. She paused, letting the words sink in. And lessons are only useful if you're willing to learn. The alien stared, torn between fear and wonder. Krell's mind raced. A lesson? From whom? The Vorik? Or humans themselves? He glanced at the crystal, its surface glinting like a challenge. Lila's calm was unnerving, but it sparked something in him, a hunger to know more. Vun slammed a clawed hand on his desk. We will learn, he vowed. With or without your help. Lila nodded, as if she'd expected that. Good, she said. Keep going. The story's just beginning. As she walked away, Krell caught a flicker in her eyes, pride, maybe, or amusement. Whatever it was, it told him one thing, humans weren't afraid. And that made them dangerous. The council adjourned, but the questions lingered. Why Vorik? Why now? And what battles had humans fought that no one else remembered? The crystal sat in its case, a silent promise of answers. Krell stayed behind, staring at it. He didn't know it yet, but he'd just stepped into a tale bigger than the galaxy itself, a tale of human strength, buried in the words of a vanished race. And somewhere, far away, Lila smiled to herself. The council wanted truth. They'd get it. But they'd have to work for it, just like humans always had. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with restless energy as the translators worked overtime. The Human War archives, locked in their shimmering crystal, glowed under the scrutiny of alien eyes. Krell, the junior archivist, hovered near the edge of the chaos, his 4 arms twitching with excitement. The Vorik script was unraveling, slowly, painfully, but every decoded word sent a shiver through the room. Battles. Strategies. A history no one had expected from humans. And standing at the center of it all was Lila, the human diplomat, her calm smile a stark contrast to the growing panic around her. Vun, the council leader, paced his platform, scales flashing red. Tell us what this means, he demanded again, his voice a low rumble. Lila shrugged. You're already finding out, she said. Why spoil the fun? But the council wasn't in the mood for games. Mira, the feathered translator, fluttered forward with a tablet, her voice sharp with urgency. We've pieced together more, she said. The archives mention a conflict, thousands of years ago. Humans against the Vorik. It's fragmented, but it says your people survived something, impossible. The chamber fell silent. The Vorik weren't just warriors, they were nightmares, their ships bristling with weapons that could crack planets. 3,000 years ago, they'd ruled the stars. Then they'd vanished. And now, humans claimed that legacy. Vun's eyes narrowed. Impossible, he growled. Your species wasn't even in space then. Lila's smile didn't waver. Maybe we got an early start, she said. Keep reading. The story wasn't in the chamber anymore, it was in the past, 3 millennia ago, when Earth's first ships dared to leave their solar system. Commander Torin stood on the bridge of the Dawnbreaker, a clunky vessel patched together with hope and steel. He was broad-shouldered, with a scar across his cheek from a life of hard choices. His crew, pilots, engineers, dreamers, watched the stars with wide eyes, unaware of the shadow waiting beyond their sun. The Vorik fleet appeared without warning, a wall of black metal and fire. Their lead ship broadcast a single message in their jagged tongue: surrender or burn. Torin didn't understand the words, but he knew the tone. His reply was simple: not today. The Dawnbreaker was no match for Vorik warships. Their cannons tore through human shields like paper, and the fleet outnumbered Torin's ragtag ships 10-1. But humans had something the Vorik didn't expect: stubbornness. Torin ordered his crew to scatter, dodging between asteroids and using the debris as cover. The Vorik, masters of brute force, chased with relentless precision, but Torin watched. He learned. Every move they made, every blast they fired, he studied. Days turned into weeks, and the humans held on, losing ships but gaining something more valuable: time. In the wreckage of a downed Vorik scout, Torin found a prisoner. A hulking warrior, bleeding but alive, its voice a guttural rasp. Torin didn't kill it. He listened. Back in the council chamber, the aliens leaned closer as Mira read another line from the crystal: we took their words and made them ours. Krell's spines stood on end. Took their words. The Vorik prisoner had snarled at Torin, spitting phrases of war and death. But Torin, with a mix of patience and desperation, recorded every sound. His crew rigged a translator from scraps, and slowly, the Vorik language spilled out: complex, brutal, brilliant. It wasn't just a way to speak, it was a way to think. 16 tenses for combat, words for tactics no human had dreamed of. Torin saw the power in it. They're teaching us how to beat them, he told his crew. And beat them they did. The flashback flickered on. Torin's ships, battered but alive, turned the Vorik's own strategies against them. The aliens loved straight lines, massive assaults that crushed resistance. So Torin went crooked. He lured them into traps, faked retreats, struck from angles they couldn't predict. The Vorik warrior, chained in the Dawnbreaker's hold, watched in silence as its fleet faltered. One by one, their ships fell, not to superior firepower, but to human tricks. A minefield hidden in a nebula. A decoy signal that led them into a star's gravity well. When the last Vorik ship burned out, Torin stood over the prisoner. Your words won this, he said. The warrior stared back, then nodded, a gesture of respect, or maybe surrender. In the present, Lila's voice cut through the council's stunned silence. That's how it started, she said. We didn't just fight the Vorik. We learned from them. Their language was too good to let die. Vun's scales paled. You defeated them? He asked, almost whispering. Lila tilted her head. Defeated? Sure. But it's more than that. We kept what they built, made it better. The chamber erupted. Aliens shouted over each other, their voices a mix of fear and disbelief. Krell scribbled notes, his mind racing. Humans didn't just survive, they turned their enemies into tools. What kind of species did that? Mira tapped her tablet, pulling up a new fragment. There's more, she said. The archives say the Vorik stopped fighting after that. No record of why. They just disappeared. The aliens froze. Disappeared. The Vorik had been unstoppable, until humans came along. Vun turned to Lila, his claws flexing. What did you do to them? He demanded. Lila's smile softened, but her eyes gleamed. We didn't destroy them, if that's what you're thinking. We're not monsters. But we did change the game. She stepped closer, her voice steady. The Vorik were warriors. So are we. The difference is, we don't stop at winning. We build. The council scrambled to process her words. Krell's curiosity burned brighter than ever. Build? What did that mean? The crystal offered a clue, a single Vorik phrase glowing on its surface: victory through adaptation. Mira translated it aloud, and the aliens gasped. Adaptation. Not force, not destruction, but change. The humans had taken the Vorak's strength and twisted it into something new. Vun's voice trembled as he spoke. You're saying you stole their legacy? Lila shook her head. Not stole. Honored. We kept their language alive because it's part of us now. Every ship, every plan, every kid who learns it, it's a tribute. The chamber fell quiet again, but it wasn't calm. It was the silence before a storm. Krell looked at Lila, then at the crystal. A tribute? Or a warning? The Vorak had been the galaxy's terror, and humans had turned their terror into a lesson. What else could they do? Vun straightened, his resolve hardening. This isn't over, he said. We'll find the truth, all of it. Lila nodded, unfazed. Go ahead, she said. The archives are yours to read. Just don't be surprised when you see yourselves in them someday. As Lila walked away, the council buzzed with new energy. Fear mingled with awe. Krell stared at the crystal, its Vorak runes pulsing like a heartbeat. Humans hadn't just beaten the unbeatable, they'd made it their own. And that, he realized, was more dangerous than any weapon. The past was alive in those words, and the future stretched out like an open sky. What had happened to the Vorak? And what would happen to the galaxy now that humans carried their torch? The answers were there, waiting, and Krell knew one thing for sure, this story was far from finished. The Galactic Council chamber felt heavier now, as if the air itself carried the weight of the human war archives. The crystal sat on its pedestal, its Vorak runes glowing faintly, taunting the aliens with secrets they couldn't yet grasp. Krell, the junior archivist, stood among the crowd, his 4 arms still as he watched the chaos unfold. The translators had worked through the night, pulling more fragments from the ancient data, maps of lost battlefields, sketches of ships marked with Vorak symbols, and cryptic lines about a war that defied time. Lila, the human diplomat, leaned against a wall, her calm smile unshaken despite the growing storm of alien voices. Vun, the council leader, loomed over his desk, scales flickering between green and gray. We've found your traces, he said, pointing at a holographic display. Your ships, your bases, they're covered in Vorak. Explain. Lila stepped forward, her boots echoing in the tense silence. It's no secret, she said. We've been using Vorak for a long time. It's practical. Strong. We like it. Her words were simple, but they hit the council like a shockwave. Practical. The language of a vanished warrior race, practical. Mira, the feathered translator, chirped nervously as she tapped her tablet. We've decoded more, she said. The archives say humans fought the Vorak, and won. But it doesn't say how. Or why they disappeared. The display shifted, showing a grainy image of an ancient human ship, its hull etched with jagged runes. The council murmured, their voices a mix of fear and fascination. Krell's eyes widened. 1. Against the Vorak. Vun's claws dug into his desk. You expect us to believe that? He asked. The Vorak were unstoppable. Your people were primitives then, barely off your planet. Lila's smile turned sharp. Primitives with a knack for surprises, she said. We didn't need fancy ships. We had ideas. She nodded toward the crystal. It's all in there. Keep digging. The aliens didn't waste time. The display flared with new data, records of human outposts scattered across the galaxy, each one marked with Vorak phrases like, hold the line, and, strength in silence. Krell scribbled notes, his mind racing. Silence. The Vorak were loud, brutal. What had humans done differently? The story slipped back 3,000 years, to the fading echoes of that first war. Commander Torin stood on a rocky asteroid, the Dawnbreaker limping behind him. The Vorak fleet was down to a handful of ships, their once mighty armada crippled by human tricks. Torin's crew was smaller now, their faces tired but fierce. The Vorik prisoner, a towering figure with cracked armor, sat nearby, watching as humans repaired their ship with scavenged parts. Torin crouched beside it, holding a makeshift translator. "Why do you fight so hard?" he asked. The warrior's voice rasped through the device. "It is our way. Strength is all." Torin nodded, thoughtful. "Ours too," he said. "But we don't just break things. We fix them." The Vorik tilted its head, a rare flicker of curiosity in its eyes. Torin kept talking, asking about their words, their ways. Days passed, and the warrior spoke, slowly at first, then freely. It taught Torin phrases of war, but also survival: endure the storm, bend, don't break. The humans listened, learned, wrote it down. When the final Vorik ship attacked, Torin didn't meet it with force. He waited, hiding his fleet in a nebulous haze. The enemy charged, expecting a fight, and found nothing. Then, from the shadows, Torin struck, using their own tactics with a human twist. The Vorik ship burned out, and the warrior watched in silence. "You win," it said at last. Torin shook his head. "We both do." In the council chamber, Lila's voice pulled them back. "That's the thing about us," she said. "We don't just take. We keep what matters." Vun stared, his scales paling. "You kept their language," he said. "Why?" Lila shrugged. "It's useful. And it's a good story. We teach it to our kids, makes them think." The aliens gasped. "Kids." Mira fluttered her wings, pulling up a new fragment. "She's right," she said. "The archives mention schools. Humans learn Vorik young, like a game." The display showed a video, grainy but clear, human children laughing as they recited Vorik phrases, turning war cries into chants. "Through the fire, we rise," they sang, grinning like it was nothing. The council erupted. "A game?" Vun roared. "This is a warrior's tongue." Lila laughed, a soft, genuine sound that made Krell's spines tingle. "Sure," she said. "But it's ours now. We made it fun." Fun. The Vorik had terrified galaxies, and humans turned their legacy into playtime. Krell's curiosity burned hotter. He glanced at the crystal, its runes whispering possibilities. Mira tapped her tablet again. "There's a record here," she said. "The last Vorik encounter. It says they stopped fighting, then nothing. No destruction, no retreat. Just, gone." The aliens leaned closer, breathless. "Gone." Lila crossed her arms, watching them squirm. "You want to know what happened?" she asked. "Guess." Vun's eyes narrowed. "You destroyed them," he said. Lila shook her head. "Too easy. Try again." A scientist named Torm, a squid-like being with glowing tendrils, spoke up. "You, allied with them?" Lila's smile twitched. "Warmer," she said. "But not quite. We changed them." "Changed them?" The chamber buzzed with wild theories. Had humans wiped them out? Absorbed them? Saved them? Krell's mind spun. The Vorik were gone, but their words lived on, in human voices, human hands. The display flickered, showing a final archive entry: "The enemy became the lesson." Mira translated it, her feathers trembling. "Lesson?" Vun echoed. Lila nodded. "We learned from them," she said. "And they learned from us. That's all you get for now." She stepped back, leaving the council in chaos. Krell scribbled faster, piecing it together. Humans hadn't just won, they'd turned a war into something else. Something bigger. But what? Vun slammed his desk. "This is madness," he growled. "Your people hide too much." Lila turned, her eyes bright. Hide. No. We share when you're ready. Are you? The question hung in the air, sharp and daring. The alien stared at her, torn between anger and awe. Torm's tendrils pulsed as he spoke. Your ships, he said. We've scanned them. Vorik runes everywhere, on weapons, shields, even doors. Why? Lila grinned. Decoration, she said, then paused. And a reminder. We don't forget where we came from, or what we can do. The council shifted, uneasy. Krell looked at the crystal, its glow steady and strong. A reminder. A victory? Or something more? The archives hinted at a truth just out of reach, and he wanted it, badly. Vun straightened, his voice cold. We'll find out, he said. Everything. Lila nodded, unfazed. Good luck, she said. You'll need it. She walked away, leaving the chamber in a storm of whispers. Krell stayed behind, staring at the crystal. The Vorik were gone, but their shadow lingered, in human words, human strength. What had really happened all those years ago? And why did humans guard it so casually, like a treasure they didn't mind sharing, if you could catch it? The scientist, Torm, approached him, tendrils dim. What else are they hiding? He asked. Krell didn't answer. He didn't know. But he felt it, a spark of something vast, something human, waiting to unfold. The council adjourned, but the tension didn't fade. The archives pulsed with life, a story growing bigger with every word. Humans had faced the galaxy's monsters and come out stronger, not with claws or cannons, but with ideas. Krell's heart beat faster. Whatever came next, he knew one thing, the stars weren't ready for this. And neither was he. The Galactic Council chamber was a fortress of nerves now, its walls humming with reinforced energy fields. The crystal from the Human War Archive sat at the center, its Vorik runes casting a steady glow across the faces of aliens who no longer knew what to believe. Krell, the junior archivist, stood near the edge, his forearms trembling, not from fear, but from the thrill of being so close to the truth. The council had spent days scouring the galaxy for clues, piecing together scans of human ships, bases, and colonies, all marked with the dead language of the Vorik. Lila, the human diplomat, sat casually in a chair, her calm smile a quiet challenge. Vun, the council leader, towered over her, scales flashing a deep, angry red. We've had enough riddles, he said. Tell us everything, now. Lila leaned back, crossing her arms. Everything, she echoed. That's a tall order. How about I start with the good stuff? The aliens leaned closer, their voices hushed. Vun's claws flexed. No games, he warned. Lila nodded, her smile softening. No games, she agreed. Just the story. She stood, her presence filling the room despite her small frame. 3,000 years ago, we met the Vorik. They tried to crush us. We didn't let them. That's where it began. The chamber buzzed, but she held up a hand. You've read the archives. You know we won. But it's not about winning, it's about what came after. The story slid back to the past, to the asteroid field where Commander Torin faced the end of the war. The Dawnbreaker floated among the wreckage, its hull scarred but unbroken. The Vorik fleet was gone, some destroyed, some fled, but the warrior prisoner remained, its massive form slumped against a wall. Torin stood before it, his crew watching from a distance. The translator crackled as the Vorik spoke. You fight like us, it said, but not for death. Why? Torin wiped sweat from his brow, his voice steady. We fight to live, he said. Not just us, everyone. Even you. The warrior's eyes narrowed, but it didn't argue. Instead, it pointed to a device on its belt, a recorder, etched with runes. Take it, it said. Our way. Your hands. Torin took the device, and over the next days, the Vorik taught him more, not just war, but survival, honor, resilience. The humans listened, their battered fleet growing stronger with every lesson. When the last Vorik ship returned, it didn't attack. Its captain hailed Torin, speaking in their jagged tongue. "You've earned this," it said. Then it turned and left, vanishing into the stars. Torin watched it go, the recorder heavy in his hand. "They're not gone," he told his crew. "They're waiting, for us to prove we're worth it." The humans didn't chase. They went home, carrying the Vorik's words like a torch through the dark. In the council chamber, Lila's voice brought them back. "That's the truth," she said. "We didn't destroy the Vorik. We learned from them, and they learned from us." Then they left. Vun's scales flickered. "Left?" he asked. "Where?" Lila shrugged. "No idea. Maybe they're out there, watching. Maybe they found peace. But they gave us their language, and we kept it alive." The alien stared, stunned. Krell's hearts raced. Not destroyed, changed. Humans had turned a war into a bridge, and the Vorik had walked across it. But why? Mira, the translator, tapped her tablet, her feathers trembling. "The archives end with a message," she said. "In Vorik, the stars bow to those who learn." The chamber fell silent. Torm, the squid-like scientist, spoke up, his tendrils glowing faintly. "Your rise," he said. "It started then. Your ships, your power, it's all tied to them." Lila nodded. "Sure is," she said. "We took what they gave us and ran with it. Every generation, we built on it, ships, tactics, ideas. Vorik's in our bones now." The display flared, showing human fleets, modern, sleek, but etched with those ancient runes. "Peace through strength," one read. "Endure and overcome," said another. Vun's voice shook. "You've been hiding this," he said. "A warrior's legacy, disguised as peace." Lila laughed, a bright, honest sound that made Krell smile despite himself. "Hiding," she said. "It's right in front of you. We don't flaunt it, but we don't bury it either. It's who we are." She stepped closer, her eyes sweeping the room. "You see danger. We see a chance, to grow, to explore, to make something better. That's why we kept Vorik. It's not just war. It's possibility." The aliens shifted, their fear giving way to something else, wonder, maybe, or respect. The past flickered one last time. Torin stood on Earth, years after the war, older now, his hair streaked with gray. He spoke to a crowd of children, holding the Vorik recorder. "This isn't about fighting," he said. "It's about standing up. Learning. Making the stars ours, not by force, but by being human." The kids cheered, and Torin smiled, passing the recorder to a girl with bright eyes. "Your turn," he said. She took it, reciting a Vorik phrase, "Through the fire, we rise." The crowd clapped, and the language lived on, not as a relic, but as a spark. Torin looked to the sky, knowing the Vorik were out there somewhere, trusting humans to carry their legacy. Back in the chamber, Lila faced the council. "That's our secret," she said. "We don't just survive, we adapt, we build, we dream." The Vorik saw that. "Now you do." Vun sat back, his scales calming to a dull green. "And if we challenge you?" he asked. Lila's smile turned playful. "Try it," she said. "We'll learn from you too." The aliens laughed, nervous, but genuine. Krell's spines relaxed. Humans weren't a threat, they were a puzzle, a story that kept growing. Torm's tendrils pulsed. "Your power," he said. "It's not just ships. It's this, your way." Lila nodded. "Exactly. Want to join us? The question hung in the air, bold and open. The council didn't answer, not yet. But the crystal's final rune glowed brighter, learn. Mira translated it softly, and the aliens looked at each other, seeing the galaxy differently. Humans had faced the Vorik and come out stronger, not with claws or cannons, but with hearts that refused to quit. Krell felt it, a pull, a hunger to know more. Lila turned to leave, pausing at the door. The stars are big, she said. Plenty of room for all of us, if you're brave enough. She walked out, leaving the council in a quiet storm of thought. Vun stared at the crystal, then at his peers. What now? He asked. No one spoke, but Krell knew. The humans had shared their story, not to scare, but to invite. The Vorik were gone, but their echo lived in human voices, human hands. And the galaxy? It was theirs, not by conquest, but by curiosity, by grit, by the sheer will to keep going. The chamber emptied, but Krell stayed, gazing at the crystal. The stars belonged to those who learned, and humans had learned best. What would the council do with that? He didn't know. But he couldn't wait to find out.